dissecting this Robert F. Kennedy Jr. disaster of an interview on CNN, basically getting caught in multiple lies. Live on CNN. So it really is mesmerizing. It's unbelievable. We'll get to that. Does this end his candidacy? I'm not sure, but we will talk a little bit about that coming up in just a few minutes. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, somebody that I've really always wanted to talk to. His name is Keith Boykin. Keith Boykin is an American TV and film producer. He's also a national political commentator. You've seen him on MSNBC. You've seen him on CNN. And he's also a former White House aide to the former President Bill Clinton. The reason why we're having him on the show today, because this has become a huge story, right? You had these presidents of these universities, including Harvard, Penn State. You had these congressional hearings. And listen, while I'm not a defender of Stefanik, who I probably going to be the vice president under Donald Trump, I believe she was right in this instance, and I hate to defend her here because she's the kind of person that hasn't gone after Donald Trump once. She wears the Donald Trump knee pad, so to speak. But I personally believe, and I know one of those presidents has already resigned. I believe the other two should, and I believe the president of Harvard should probably resign. Her name, Claudine Gay. Now, Keith Boykin's probably going to disagree with me on this. And I want to get into a good discussion with him. Really intelligent guy, really smart guy. I want to hear why he says the president of Harvard should not be fired. Because I'm consistent, right? I think all the presidents there that were in those congressional hearings should have been fired. I don't care the color of their skin or their gender or their political beliefs, any of that stuff. If somebody asked you the question, and the question basically being the genocide of a group, in this case being Jewish people, does that break your code of conduct? And if the answer is not an immediate no, then I have a serious problem with that. So anyway, we'll get to that at the bottom of the hour. Great guest, Keith Boykin, joining us. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made a complete ass of himself on CNN. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you and tell you a lot of what he believes in as far as social beliefs, his stance on abortion, for example, his stance on Israel, for example. I agree with a lot of his beliefs. But when it comes to vaccines and the misinformation, and I would call it conspiracy theories, I have a serious problem with that. So he's doing a live interview on CNN, and this was probably about a 10-minute interview or so. And the overwhelming majority of that interview was about his takes on vaccinations. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got caught in multiple lies. And I'll start it off right here with the first one. And this is very similar to Vivek Ramaswamy. When Vivek Ramaswamy is questioned on something that he said in the past, he usually will deny it. He'll lie about it as if it never happened. And then when called on it, he starts insulting people. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., live on CNN, is confronted with his own words and in real time lies about it. Have a listen to this.
You have gained notoriety for your skepticism about vaccines. And over the summer in an interview, you said, quote, "There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective." Do you still believe that?
I never said that.
So stop me. We have the clip. Please play the clip.
Play the whole clip.
You've talked about that the media slanders you by calling you an anti-vaxxer. And you've said that you're not anti-vaccine, you're pro-safe vaccine. Difficult question. Can you name any vaccines that you think are good?
I think some of the live virus vaccines are probably averting more problems than they're causing. There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
So you did say it. Do you still believe it?
Well, here's what I would say. First of all, I'm not anti-vaccine.
How is that statement not anti-vaccine?
Well, I can say right now there's no medicine for cancer that's safe and effective. It doesn't mean I'm against all medicines. I've been fighting 40 years to get mercury out of fish. Nobody calls me anti-fish. What I want is vaccines that are proven safety. And what I meant, which was a bad use of words in this, none of the vaccines that are currently on the mandated schedule for children, the 72 vaccines, have ever been tested in a pre-licensing safety study.
You see what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just did? Before the clip is played, and I would imagine he didn't know that she had that clip ready to go, he says, quote, "I never said that." Then, when he finds out that she actually has a clip ready to go, then he says, "Well, play the whole clip." She did. And then it turns from the lie, which is, "I never said that," to maybe it was a bad choice of words. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just lied to you, just like Vivek Ramaswamy lies to you, just like Donald Trump lies to you every day, just like the MAGA Republicans lie to you every day. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a liar. He did say that most vaccines, for the most part, are not good for you. He did say that in a podcast. And then when confronted on it, he gives you a word salad. He couldn't use the excuse of "show me the context," because they did, and he lied. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also at one point, fairly recently, a few years back, compared the COVID lockdowns to the Holocaust, which his own wife, Cheryl Hines, called, with his comments, reprehensible. Have a listen to this.
You also, in 2022, had this to say at a rally opposing COVID mandates. Watch.
Even in Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland. You can hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide.
So your wife, Cheryl Hines, put out a tweet that called those remarks reprehensible and insensitive. Is she right?
No, she's not right. But it was something that needed to be said at that time because CNN, particularly Jake Tapper, who I know is very, very close to you, took those remarks and misinterpreted and mischaracterized
Well,
them.
I mean, it
you
looks
put
like
it out
you are
there.
comparing it to comparing COVID to what happened in Hitler's Germany
No, I never
during
did
the Holocaust.
that. You show the whole clip. That's not what I was
play
doing.
it again. Play the clip.
I don't want
again.
to play that again. I want to show what I was saying before that.
Isn't it interesting when he says play the clip again, she offers to play it again, and then it turns into something else? Again, let me be very clear on this. Just like Marjorie Taylor Greene compared kids wearing masks to Nazis, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. compared COVID lockdowns to the Holocaust. Let me be clear again. When we were being told that businesses wouldn't be open, we were asked, not forced, to stay home. That is not compared to people who were Jewish, who were murdered, burned alive, shot, raped, with their family members watching. There is no equivalency to COVID lockdowns or, quite frankly, anything COVID related to the Holocaust. And even though I absolutely despise Donald Trump, and I don't make any apologies for it, and even though I have said on this show that Donald Trump does have some dictator-like tendencies, and he used similar verbiage like some evil, murderous dictators in the past, I don't call Donald Trump a Nazi, and I don't compare him to Adolf Hitler. Because in my personal opinion, nothing, not Donald Trump or any politician, is comparable to a man who was responsible for murdering over 7 million people. And again, this is coming from the person who can't get more anti-Donald Trump than me. It is beneath any oath of office, and us as American citizens, nobody should be comparing certainly COVID lockdowns, to the Holocaust. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is despicable for doing so. He's wrong. It's 100% wrong. Now, what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. likes to do is he likes to deny reality. It's what he does. And he says he's not anti-vaccine. But he told this woman on CNN that he doesn't think that any vaccine should be mandated for school children. There is no question that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is anti-vaccine. Now, he'll claim he's not, but listen to his words and listen to the things he says on the record and listen to his lies in this CNN interview alone. Have a listen to this exchange.
So you don't think a hepatitis B vaccine is progress?
I don't think that a hepatitis vaccine, I don't think the current hepatitis, I think the science suggests that the current hepatitis B vaccines are causing more problems than they're solving. And listen, why would you...
I'm not in a position to argue with you on the science, but I'm glad you're on the record as saying that.
Why would you have a baby, give a baby a hepatitis B vaccine when the only way that you can catch hepatitis B is through sexual interactions or using needles? Now, there are mothers who pass it to their children, and all those mothers are tested in every hospital in the country. So if somebody's at risk, then I wouldn't object to it, but why give it to a whole generation? You know, good health comes from building a strong immune system, and we never had hepatitis B epidemics when I was a kid. We never had rotavirus epidemics. A lot of these products were added to the schedule because they enrich the companies, and this is an automatic boon, an automatic windfall for companies that they're now allowed to mandate their product with no legal liability.
So do you think school children should not be required to be vaccinated? In public schools?
No, I would be against mandates at all.
For any vaccines?
For any vaccine.
Okay.
So he just said that he would be against any mandate at any school for any vaccine. And he says he's not anti-vaccine. Ladies and gentlemen, do we understand what's going on here? That's his position. I disagree with it. But don't tell me you're anti-vaccine. That's like me saying, if someone asked me, are you anti-Donald Trump? Of course I would say yes, but that'd be like me saying no. I'm not anti-Donald Trump. Now, that's obviously not true. I'm anti-Donald Trump till the cows come home. Just like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is anti-vaccine. I mean, that's clear, isn't it? It's as clear as can be. So, just to review so far, he lied right from the get-go in this interview. He said he didn't say something that he said. They had the audio to play it. And then when he's confronted on his lie, he says, well, I could have chose my words better. Blatant lie. And now we go to January 6th, because this is what a conspiracy theorist does. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a conspiracy theorist. If you ask any normal human being that is not biased, that has a brain, and you ask them if January 6th was an inside job, they would say no. Why? Because there's no evidence to prove that January 6th was an inside job. It was incited by Donald Trump. The election was stolen. We're going to march down to the Capitol. We're going to fight like hell, so on and so forth. And over 1,000 people have already been convicted. More people are going to be convicted. Many of those people, a good portion of them, are in jail right now. And many of them didn't say that the FBI or the CIA or anybody forced them to do what they did. In fact, most of them said they were doing it at the hands or the words of Donald J. Trump. If this was an inside job, you would have heard some of those people in a courtroom talk about that. They didn't, because it wasn't an inside job. And when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is asked about this, instead of saying, no, it wasn't an inside job, he says, I don't know. That's like somebody saying, is the earth flat? Anybody with a brain that's not a conspiracy theorist or not Kyrie Irving would say, no, it's been proven. The earth is not flat. The earth is round. Does Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say, no, January 6th wasn't an inside job. There's no evidence to prove that. No. Listen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and why I call him a conspiracy theorist.
Some Republicans have suggested that there was government involvement in the riots on January 6th. Do you believe that?
I don't know. I don't have any way of knowing. The only thing I saw again yesterday was a clip where the FBI director was asked by Congress, were there FBI agents in that crowd? And he refused to answer.
He said no. He said no, there were not.
He said there not.
He said
then
no.
I don't have any reason to believe there are, if that's true.
All right.
Blatant misinformation from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He doesn't know what he's talking about, just like when it gets to the vaccines. Not a doctor, not an infectious disease expert, doesn't know what he's talking about. When he's asked about January 6th on national television, he's a political presidential candidate, claims in the testimony that the FBI director didn't answer the question. That's a lie. He did. He said there were no agents in that crowd. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. attempted to lie again, and then he was fact-checked, and then he backed off. Somebody who is not a conspiracy theorist immediately answers that question. Was January 6th an inside job? No, there's no evidence to prove that it was an inside job. And until I see the evidence, I'm going to say it wasn't an inside job because there's no evidence. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., well, I have no way of knowing, so I really don't know. In my opinion, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is just as dangerous as Donald Trump when it comes to these conspiracy theories and these lies. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is more than a conspiracy theorist. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a liar. He blatantly lies in these interviews, just like Vivek Ramaswamy lies when he's confronted on his own words. And Vivek is just as bad. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's floating around the same BS nonsense. This about January 6th was an inside job. No evidence to prove that. He's a liar. 2020 was a stolen election. He's a liar. Hunter Biden and the Hunter Biden laptop. Vivek Ramaswamy is worse than a liar because he's intentionally lying. He knows that January 6th wasn't an inside job. So why does he say it? So that he can get votes. The red meat of the Republican Party, the MAGA Republicans. We'll open up the phone lines if you want to be a part of the conversation. 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, that number is 702-221-7283. Why are there so many people out there that buy into these lies? It could be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about the vaccines. It could be Donald Trump about the 2020 election. It could be Alex Jones about how some of these mass shootings never happened. 702-221-7283. Let's start off with Stephen. Stephen, you're first up. What's going on, man?
Paranoid conspiracy theorists. You know, like when I see someone who wore masks and took 9 boosters from criminal corporations calling people paranoid conspiracy theorists, it's always enjoyable.
Okay, so let's have a conversation about that. You think the vaccine...
So how many boosters did you get?
Can I ask my question, or are you going to interrupt me?
I asked you a question.
No. See, it's my show. Okay, first of all, thank you for calling me sweetie. I appreciate that, but can we actually get to the bones of the conversation? Are you saying that you think the vaccines were bad? They didn't save lives?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay, so where are you getting that information from, sir? What doctor? Because I just don't trust you. What respected...
Oh, and I don't trust doctors that you trust. I trust real doctors.
Okay, so name me one.
You think that even you calling them vaccine, sweetie pants, doesn't make them a vaccine. That's not what they do. They don't provide immunity.
Okay, got you. So where are you getting that information from?
Talking point,
okay,
boy.
So sweetie, where do you get that information from? What real doctor, sweetie?
From tons of people.
No. I didn't ask you. Pot him down.
Oh, yeah. You
pot him down. Hey, sweetie, we're potting you down, sweetie. The question wasn't how many. The question, sweetie, was, please name me the sweetie doctor or the infectious disease expert working, saving lives every day, sweetie. Name me the doctor that is well-respected where you got that information from. Go.
What did you get?
Sir, answer my question.
Boosters?
Sir, what's your education? Did you ever go to school? What's your education? Did you get the dumb vaccine? Is that what you got? How many dumb boosters
what
did you get?
What community college did you go to?
What conspiracy theorist vaccine did you get, sweetie? Now I'm going to ask you one more time, because you won't answer any of my questions, sweetie. So I'm going to ask you one more time, sweetie. Name me the well-respected doctor or infectious disease expert that actually has a degree, unlike you, because I'm sure you have no medical degrees at all. Name me the doctor where you get your information. By now, you probably could have even tried to Google it, sweetie. Okay, sweetie, I'm now asking you for a sixth time, sweetie. Go ahead, sweetie.
Garbage.
Go ahead, sweetie. Bye, sweetie. You can't answer my question because you can't answer my question because you're uneducated. You have no idea what you're talking about. You eat the Tucker Carlson rhetoric. You get your medical information from voodoo doctors who believe in demon semen. That's where you get your medical information from. You see, that's the difference. There's probably a lot of differences between you and me. First of all, I don't just go out calling men sweetie. That's a little strange. But hey, if you're attracted to somebody like me that's smarter than you, if you're attracted to somebody like me who's obviously probably more better looking than you and more intelligent than you and more educated, then I understand. You have very good taste, sir. Totally okay. I think I've had enough of you, sweetie, okay? I've given you 8 opportunities to answer my question. You think you do your own research, so that means you know more than all the infectious disease doctors all over the world that actually save lives every day. You mock people for getting booster shots. You mock people for getting vaccines when you have absolutely no idea what the hell you're talking about. You're an embarrassment. Have a nice day. I'm done with you, sweetie. I'm done with you, sweetie. Have a nice day. Sorry, I'm taken. 702-221-7283. Again, that number to call if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283. Let's go to Gary is next. Hello, Gary. What's going on?
Hey, let me see if I can explain myself. I'm an independent voter. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. Somewhere in the middle of all this. But who in their right mind, even if you didn't have the goods on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., even if he was, upright, who can listen to that guy address the union for an hour and a half? Who can listen to him for more than 10 minutes?
Well, we agree. That's a good point there.
No, if you say he's denying reality, right off the bat he's denying reality. He's not getting elected. This is ridiculous.
Well, hold on, Gary. Gary, I agree with you. We're on the same side here. But I will say this, and I'm not saying I always believe the polls, because I don't. But a lot of the polls are saying that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. might have a better chance of beating Trump than Biden does. I don't know if that's true or not. We have to take his candidacy seriously, even though I don't take the man seriously. Does that make sense?
Ooh. Can I ask you a favor? I know you have other callers. The Las Vegas Weekly, they have the Just One Project. That lady is a sweetheart. You should have her on the show.
I would be happy to.
Tremendous work.
I would be happy to.
I know
Gary,
you're doing politics. Hey, have a Merry Christmas.
You too,
man.
Gary. You have a great holiday. Thank you so much. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. And again, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283. Just don't call me sweetie. It's a little awkward. Woman or man. Let's go to Julie. Julie's next. What's up, Julie?
Hi, how are you? It's me again. Brian, I am a registered nurse. I respect, I trust in vaccines because a vaccine has been, curing a lot of disease. But my point is that why forcing people to get a vaccine that we need years, 10 years minimum to know the side effects and the long-term effects of any medication.
So every infection. Hold on. Let me interject. Let me interject. Okay. Every infectious disease expert that I've talked to says over 90% of any side effects you will get from just about any vaccine happens within 6 to 8 weeks. You're a nurse, so I would imagine that you probably know that. That's number one. Number two, I don't believe that anybody should have been forced to get vaccinated. I've never been one of those people that believe that you should have been forced to. But the problem I have with Mr. Sweetie Pants, who just called in a few callers ago, is he's mocking people who have. He's making fun of people that have been vaccinated or that have been boosters. I have a serious problem with that. I've never been the kind of person that mocked or make fun of people that were not vaccinated. I have a problem with people like that who make fun of people who have, and I would hope that you feel the same way I feel about that.
No, I don't mock anyone. Because
I didn't
if
say you
if there
did.
is a
I
medical-
didn't. You're not listening,
no.
Julie. I didn't say
No,
you.
no, I'm listening
Okay,
to you.
Julie, hear me out.
But you're not-
Hear me out.
Uh-huh.
I didn't say that you said that or you did that. What I am saying is that there are some people that do, and I hope you would agree with me that that is wrong.
I agree with you.
Okay,
but
good.
at the same time, we need time to study, especially this is a new technology because it's not a
So do you understand why they
virus.
pushed it out as fast as it did? At one point, we were losing 4,000 to 5,000 people a day. We were in a global pandemic, and they needed to do something and get it out there. And you know that more than
Right.
half the world, more than half
But
the
I'm
world
gonna
has
ask
been
you
vaccinated.
This question.
Sure.
Okay, but I'm going to ask you this question. Why Biden stopped sending the monoclonal antibody to red states that were saving people at the beginning of the pandemic?
I have no. Where did you get that information from that they were not sending certain medications to red states? Where are you getting
the
that from?
monoclonal antibody.
Where are you getting that from? Where did you get that information from?
From the NBC, ABC.
Okay, so give me the
CNN.
direct NBC, ABC story that said they weren't sending.
Well, I have to send
Hold on.
you because I
Okay, they
I
weren't
cannot send you
sending
right
certain
now.
medications to only red states. That's false. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. That's false. That's
Oh,
absurd.
yes.
Okay, then I'll tell you what. You call back and you can give me the actual article that or the proof that says
Okay,
that
I'll
they
do
were
that.
only
I'll do
sending
that.
in the history of this country that they were only sending certain medications to states that were either Republican or Democrat. Because I'm sorry, that's not true.
Yes.
No,
Well,
it's not
that's
true.
what the media reported, that the monoclonal
Okay,
antibody
well,
is going to be restricted
okay,
to red states.
okay, well,
and that is a problem.
All right. Well, you send me that article. You send me that
Absolutely.
article. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate the phone call.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Number to call 702-221-7283. I'm going to tell you guys right now that is 150% not true. Let's go to Carl. Carl, I got about a minute for you. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, real quick, Brian. I get such a laugh out of hearing these people with those ridiculous conspiracy theories. Number one, the vaccine. I took it. I took all the boosters. My wife took it. She took all the boosters. I wouldn't let do that, and I know a little more about medical things than other people, and I wouldn't let my wife do it, or I would do it. And for information to people who say it's going to kill you if you take it, that when they had the worst of the pandemic, people the vaccine doesn't keep you from getting COVID, but it keeps you from dying from it and from being hospitalized and being put on a ventilator.
Correct.
The most people in the hospital who died from COVID were the unvaccinated. Period.
Yeah, correct. And listen, every vaccine is going to have some risk. We know that. I don't think there's any doctor out there that would say otherwise. If you are somebody who gets a vaccine, no matter what the vaccine is, there's always going to be a level of risk, and nobody would deny that. At the same time, what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing, in my opinion, is extremely dangerous rhetoric.
Of course. It's the most ridiculous thing. Because if everybody stopped taking vaccines, it doesn't matter what disease it is. What's going to happen? I mean, it's ridiculous. You, especially the COVID vaccine, it saves so many lives. And these people with their conspiracy theories say there's one on another radio. I won't mention his name, but it's like when two countries start fighting.
Carl, I'm with you 100%. Carl, I got to run. I appreciate the call, my friend. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sure.
All right, so we are going to switch topics now. I appreciate all the phone calls. This is a story that has made national news. It's a story, you've heard it on pretty much every single network, where you have these university directors, these presidents, I should say, and they're asked the question about genocide, in this case, of the Jewish people. Now, listen, I am not a defender of Stefanik. I think she's a despicable human being. But I thought the question was fair. And I said, what better person to talk about this issue than somebody, certainly that I've been watching on the networks. He's a national political commentator, does a great job, an American TV and film producer, and of course, an author and a former White House aide to President Bill Clinton. I'm talking about Keith Boykin, who joins us right now. Mr. Boykin, I do appreciate you taking the time to join us. How are you, sir?
Hi, Brian. I'm doing well. I'm sorry. I've been trying to connect my microphone and it's not not
Oh, you
connected.
sound okay. You sound loud and clear, Keith. So thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let me start by saying this. I am not a Stefanik fan. I'm not a Donald Trump fan. With that being said, I thought it was a fair question to ask. What did you think of the answers that all three presidents had in regard to that questioning? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the problem was that the presidents of the universities were giving very specific, very prepared, legalistic answers to a very political question. And I don't think it's like bringing a legal brief
Mhm.
to a gunfight. And clearly, at least Stefanik had an agenda, and clearly, the university president should have been prepared to know what that agenda was.
Mhm.
And after weeks of controversy, they should have had a better answer. Um, I think that they were getting ahead of themselves because there is a question that is raging online about whether certain phrases constitute calls for genocide. So, for example, if you talk about if you use the word intifada, which in Arabic means shaking off, people are interpreting that to mean that you're calling for genocide. Or if you use the term, which is more controversial, from the river to the sea, meaning that Palestine will be free from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, or vice versa. That is a reference to a call for genocide as well. And I think that there's a place where the university presidents could have debated that point. I'm not sure they wanted to debate that point, but they could argue that we've heard people say those things, but we haven't heard people explicitly call for genocide on our campus.
Mhm.
But instead, I think they were so afraid of being caught in this gotcha question that they just deferred to what the lawyers told them to say, which is legalistic answer. It depends on the circumstances, blah blah blah. And it reminded me of another moment in history, which I don't think everybody really knows about, or people not everybody may be old enough to remember. But I worked on Michael Dukakis' campaign back in 1988.
Mm.
And I remember at one of the debates, I was assigned to travel with the candidate on the plane, press plane. I remember one of the debates, he was asked by Bernard Shaw, CNN news anchor, if Kitty Dukakis, his wife, were raped and murdered, would he support the death penalty? And Dukakis was famous for opposing the death penalty.
Right.
It was a crazy question to ask, and you would expect some sort of passionate response, because of that question. But he gave a very lawyerlistic legal response, almost no emotion, no passion, no sense of the moment. And I felt like these three presidents did the exact same thing in this moment. Maybe what they said was technically true in terms of interpreting their school's policies, but in terms of being able to rise to the occasion, I think they missed the moment.
Yeah. So Keith, I pretty much agree with everything you said. And I also agree with you that, Stefanik is somebody, she's never criticized Donald Trump. I've seen some of your commentary on that. You're absolutely right. When it comes to racism or anti-Semitic statements, she's never called out Donald Trump. We know that we know that, she probably wants to be Donald Trump's vice president. I'm with you on that stuff 100%. I just feel like, as somebody who is Jewish, and I don't think you have to be Jewish to be offended by the way some of these presidents answered or their lack of answering some of these questions. As a whole, from a simplistic point of view, if you're talking about the genocide of Jews, I just think the answer should be yes. I don't think you should be talking about context. I don't think you should be listening to attorneys. Just say yes. For the most part, we don't want those people on our campus. And I think if any of those presidents answered the question in that way, I don't think we'd be talking about it today.
Well, I think that's true in the sense that, the word genocide has a very clear and provocative meaning to people, especially in light of the Holocaust, in light of what's taking place in certain countries still today and what has taken place historically. And so the failure to recognize that moment is disappointing for sure on the point of all three university presidents. And I think that the presidents are attempting to navigate this political crisis or drama on their campuses where it's difficult to figure out what people can and can't say and how things will be interpreted. Now, genocide seems like that would be an easy one to answer. But the problem is, again, Brian, as I go back to what I was saying before, is that there are some people who are saying that even using the term intifada is a form of calling for genocide. And I think that what these university presidents were doing to avoid making a statement that would force their universities to take action against people who were using the term intifada is they were trying to hedge and trying to give a legalistic answer. Right. As opposed to saying how they would, I think if we hadn't had this controversy and if there hadn't been October 7th Hamas attack, if they were just asked the question in general, I think we'd gotten a totally different answer.
Yeah.
But because everything has changed since October 7th, it's hard to sort of pull it apart and figure out where we are. But there's a really it's a difficult time for people to speak clearly about anything, because anytime you do, you are subject to misinterpretation. I'll tell you. It's not been an easy time. I posted, what was this, a month ago? There was I think it was in late October. There was a story that was reported widely that an airstrike had hit a hospital in Gaza. This is not the Al Shifa hospital; it's another hospital incident. And it was widely reported. The New York Times, ABC News, several other media outlets. I posted this story on Twitter with a video clip from the ABC News report itself, just simply reporting what it said. And people attacked me for posting this. Yeah. Later on, there was some controversy about whether this actually took place and who was actually responsible for it. And so ABC withdrew its story, retracted its story, or not retracted, but they deleted it from from Twitter. So mine was deleted as well, but someone captured that post that I reposted and the screen cap, and they put it up on their page and said that Keith Boykin is promoting anti-Semitic tropes and promoting genocide. All I did was report what ABC News reported in a news incident. I don't know what happened. I just reported what I was told.
No, I would never say that about you. Let me take it a step further, though. Keith Olbermann did pretty much the exact same thing. The next day, he took down his post. He said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I put up this story. It's not factually accurate. Were you able to do that? Or do you feel like you have the need to do that, or you needed to do that?
In this case, there were conflicting accounts for several days, including the New York Times, about actually what took place. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the problems I think we're dealing with war itself, because they say the first casualty of war is truth. It's hard to figure out what exactly is happening. And I'm of the belief that I'm anti-war in general, but I'm of the belief that both sides are probably lying about some things or another. And the only way to come to the truth is to have independent arbiters, whether it's the news media or outside organizations, the UN, or someone the Red Cross is able to verify what's factual and what's not factual.
Right. Yeah, sure. I mean, we're living in misinformation times. We could be talking about the vaccines. We could be talking about COVID. We could be talking about the 2020 election, or we could be talking about a bomb that hit a hospital in Gaza. So I'm with you 100%. With that being said, you've been doing this for a very long time. Are you worried? Are you worried about what's going to happen in the next year? Are you worried that there is a base of the Republican Party, a large base, the MAGA base, that still believes Donald Trump won the 2020 election? They still believe, in this, whether it be the Hunter Biden laptop stuff or really just in general that Joe Biden's a pedophile. I mean, where we can go down that road. Does it worry you at all that there are so many Republicans out there that believe this stuff?
Well, yes and no. It worries me because it's a danger to our democracy. But the only reason why I have a little bit of pause is because I think that there is a ceiling to that. There's a poll that came out today, a New York Times Siena College poll, I believe it was, that showed that there is a great deal of dissatisfaction with the way President Biden is handling the crisis in Israel, for example. I know you're not asking a question about Israel in particular, but I noticed there was a divide between Democrats, Republicans, young people, and old people. And I think part of what we saw in that particular poll is that Democrats are divided about the president's policies there. Republicans are unanimously opposed to what the president is doing because he's Joe Biden, regardless of what he says. But when asked about which president would handle it better, I think more people said Trump than Joe Biden. And that was because Republicans are willing to agree with whatever Donald Trump says.
Right.
And so whatever reality that Donald Trump creates, whether it's about Israel or the 2020 election or the 2024 election, or if it's about the economy or anything he talks about, the alleged witch hunt to go after him, he has a base of people who will believe that no matter what.
Yeah.
That's what's
Yeah, I agree.
disturbing. But I don't think that that's the majority of the population. I'm sure it's not a majority of the population. Democrats have won the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections,
Right.
including both of the elections where Donald Trump ran for president.
Mhm.
So what worries me is that I think that progressives and Democrats will become so divided that they won't turn out to vote.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
not worried about the Trump people. The Trump people are going to be Trump people regardless. They're not going to change their mind no matter what. I'm worried the Democrats won't show up to the polls.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you're just joining us, he is Keith Boykin, a former White House aide to President Bill Clinton. I love his political commentary. You've seen him on all the networks. All right, so let me ask you this. Where do you think we're going to be a year from now? Do you believe that it will be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump? If you don't, tell me who you think steps in there. And who do you think Donald Trump chooses as his vice president?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's been obvious since the beginning that it's going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And I don't think there's any scenario in which Joe Biden leaves or decides not to run. And I don't see any scenario in which Donald Trump decides not to run or is not the nominee. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, for Biden, unless he dies, he's going to be the nominee. There's no way Democrats going to pick anybody else, period. And for Trump, unless he dies, there's no way the Republicans will pick anyone else. And even if they do pick someone else, there's no way Trump will allow them to do that. Even if he loses every single primary, he will destroy the entire Republican Party before he allows any other candidate, Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or anyone, to be the candidate over him.
Yeah.
So the only option is death or these 2 guys. And
I've said the same thing, Keith, on my show. I think the only thing that will stop either is if they lose their life. I wanted to ask you this from your perspective. As a black man, when you hear Byron Donald speak about Donald Trump and attempt to try to talk about race relations, or Tim Scott. I mean, I had Larry Elder on the show a few months ago who says that systemic racism doesn't exist, which I think is utterly ridiculous. When you hear these people speak, these black men or black women, it could be Candace Owens as well, what goes through your mind? Do you feel like they actually believe this stuff, or are they just saying it so that they can sell a book and make appearances on Newsmax and Fox News?
Well, they're different people. Larry Elder is different from Candace Owens. And I think Candace Owens just says whatever she can to sell a book or to promote herself. Larry Elder, I think, is probably more of a true believer. Then there are people like Herschel Walker, who I think he actually is a believer. He's just an idiot. And there are other people who are just kind of opportunist. My friend Clay Kane has a new book coming out next month called The Grift, where he talks about, how the black Republicans have basically been exploiting this for some time now in order to make a buck off of it.
Yeah.
But, there's always going to be people like that. There were black people during slavery who supported their enslavers, and there were black people during segregation who didn't approve of the civil rights movement. There will always be a small number of black people who will seek some sort of benefit from aligning themselves, associating themselves with white supremacy. I see that happening in the future, but the vast majority of black people will not vote for them. In fact, black women in particular are the most loyal constituency of the Democratic Party, giving 90% or more of their vote to presidential candidates in practically every single election. And black men are not as loyal, but we're pretty much close to it in terms of 80 to 85% of black men consistently supporting for Democratic presidential candidates. So the problem, I'm not worried about those 2 groups per se in terms of picking Trump. I'm worried about people not showing up. I'm worried about people not being energized by Joe Biden. And it's not about, for Joe Biden, it's not even about his policy per se. I mean, I don't agree with every policy decision he's made, by the way.
Right.
A lot of things I disagree with. But I don't, even if he did everything that I wanted him to do and almost everything that most other black people wanted to do, he's still an old white guy in a party that is increasingly more pluralistic and diverse and wants younger people and people of color and women to be included in power. So I don't know what he could do to not be himself. And I think that poses a unique problem for him, especially with younger voters who don't like the idea of voting for these old people who've been around forever.
If it's not Joe Biden, I'm curious, Keith. I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this question, and I agree with you. It's going to be Joe Biden. But if it wasn't, can you name me a few people, Keith, that you could really get behind and say, boy, I want that person running as a Democrat for president of the United States. They're a slam dunk. They would defeat Donald Trump. Now, I know Michelle Obama won't run, but to me, that would be the slam dunk. But can you name me a few people that you would support?
Well, there's a lot of people out there who I don't want to say that they should run it in place of Joe Biden, but I think people who have potential to run for 2028 or something were to happen in 2024. But we all know Gavin Newsom wants to run for president. I'm in California. He's made it very clear. He's debating Ron DeSantis. He's doing everything he can, but actually run for president. We all know that Gretchen Whitmer is a potential candidate, the governor of Michigan. Obviously, Kamala Harris has to be in consideration because she is the vice president. I think she's had a rough job because of the fact that she has to be a vice president to an unpopular president. But I think if she were on her own, she has some potential. Pete Buttigieg is someone people continue to bring up over and over again. I don't know if America's ready for an openly gay president, but he's a qualified candidate.
Agree.
So, there's a lot of, and I didn't support him at all in the last election cycle because I didn't think he was ready, but I do think he could now. So
can I pick your brain on this? Because tell me where I'm wrong on Kamala Harris. First of all, very educated woman, very intelligent. I have a lot of respect for her. I don't like the attacks on the right. You know what some of these extremists say, oh, she slept her way to the top. I think that's disgusting. She's a very intelligent woman and educated. With that said, why are we seeing, at least from the Democrats that I speak to, that she doesn't really resonate with a lot of people? I don't think she would defeat Donald Trump. Am I wrong in assuming that? Because I don't know her personally like you do. And where am I wrong on that? And what would you say about her where you think she would be able to defeat Donald Trump?
Well, there's two different questions. One is about her qualifications, and two is about her capacity to win. I think she's eminently qualified. I think she'd actually be a really good president. And I think she would actually deliver on a lot of issues that would surprise people and show some compassion on progressive issues where even Joe Biden hasn't done. Having said that, she's hamstrung because she is his vice president, and you can only do so much as vice president. When you are attached to an unpopular president, there's not much you can do to get out of that. But the second thing, and this is perhaps the most important thing, is that in our entire history as a country, we've only elected one person who was not a white man to be a president. And that was Barack Obama. He was also a man. But Hillary Clinton, who was probably one of the most qualified people ever to run for president, even though she won the popular vote, she lost to Donald Trump. And part of that is because we have a history of sexism in this country. I mean, practically every other major country has elected a woman as president. We have not. Kamala Harris has to deal with that. Plus, the intersectional problem of being a Black woman means that she's got to deal with racism and sexism, misogynoir, which makes it harder for her to even sort of to make an ordinary mistake. Every candidate makes mistake. Every person makes mistake. But when Donald Trump does something, we overlook. We maybe you and I don't know. Other people may not overlook it, but the vast majority of the public is willing to overlook all the crazy, ridiculous things that Donald Trump does. But if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris does one little tiny thing, it becomes a huge issue.
Completely agree. Yeah, you're right. And I talked about this yesterday. I was speaking to a Trump supporter yesterday. It's almost like we've normalized what shouldn't be normalized, which is his despicable behavior. I mean, the things he says on a regular basis, and you and I agree on that. And, Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, they don't want to cover it. Or if they talk about us, they'll say, oh, you guys are upset. You have Trump derangement syndrome. I think they have Trump derangement syndrome because they're so complicit. I mean, even Nikki Haley, who I have some respect for, she's not willing to really call out Donald Trump. She said he was fit to be president. What do you make of the fact that the Republican Party, they call themselves, for the most part, the law and order party, and many of these candidates that are running for president were asked, if he's a felon, will you still support him? And just about all of them, except for Chris Christie, raised their hand and said, yes, I'll still support him. What do you make of that?
Well, they're not a law and order party. We know this. I mean, the fact that they actually they sat there in the Capitol, members of Congress, while the insurrection was taking place, the most lawless attack on the United States government since the War of 1812. If there was never even an attack on the Capitol during the Civil War.
Mhm.
And after that, they still refused to certify. 147, I think, still refused to certify the election. They still supported Donald Trump. They still refused to hold him accountable in terms of impeachment and conviction. And the Republican Party issued a statement shortly thereafter calling the January 6th event legitimate political discourse. How do you say you're a party of law and order when you're supporting the lawless thugs who tried to take over the United States government? That's just the epitome of hypocrisy. The only law and order they believe in is apparently locking up black and brown people. They don't believe in law and order for rich white guys. They don't want Donald Trump to be held accountable. They don't want their colleagues and peers to be held accountable. They want Democrats, black people, brown people, and women who dare to control their own body to be locked up.
And maybe Hunter Biden. That's probably the only gun they care about, right, Keith? Is the gun that Hunter Biden had. I wanted to ask you, do you remain in contact with Bill Clinton and the Clintons at all? Do you talk to them on a regular basis?
I have not spoken to Bill Clinton in years. I think maybe I might have seen him at an event somewhere. That was the last time I remember speaking to him. Nor Hillary Clinton, although she follows me on Twitter for some reason. I don't know why. She only follows a few people and she follows me. But I don't even know Hillary Clinton that well, but she chose to follow me. So
what do you think Bill Clinton would say about these times we're living in today politically?
Well, I worked for Bill Clinton, and I think he was, I was inspired to work for him. I was in law school when I first saw him speak, and I was inspired because I thought he was going to be sort of an idealistic progressive in the sort of Kennedy-esque style, but more progressive in policy. And he ended up being a real disappointment on those issues. I remember sitting in the White House once with him, and someone asked what he thought he'd be remembered for in history. This is early on. He said he thought it would be lifting the ban on gays in the military and healthcare reform, neither one of which he did. But instead, he's remembered for the impeachment with Monica Lewinsky and a strong economy. And so the economy is really what saved Bill Clinton. The fact that people were doing relatively well, the fact that he was able to raise taxes, the top marginal tax rate went up to 39.6%. And we still balanced the budget for the first time since the 1960s. Actually had a surplus. The economy is strong. People were impressed by this, and he kind of wiped away the whole reputation of the Democrats as being incapable of handling the economy. But I think he'd probably be looking at what's happening right now and saying that he's glad he's not president, because he wouldn't do well today in today's political climate, because we had just to step back real quickly. When Bill Clinton ran for president in 1992, the Democrats had lost 6 of the previous 7 presidential elections. The Democrats were in a disarray. They just really wanted anybody who could win. And Bill Clinton was the candidate who we thought could do it back in 1992, and he did. But now we're in a different political era where the Democrats have won the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections.
Right.
And so Democrats feel more emboldened, more progressive. We want universal health care. We want free college education or low or reduced college education. We want student loan debt relief. We want an anti-war party. We want a higher minimum wage or a livable minimum wage. We want criminal justice reform. We want climate change action. We want all these different policies that Bill Clinton wasn't able to do any of those things. He was just nibbling at the edges. So I think he would be, in some ways inspired by the fact that so many people were able to do these things, but he wouldn't be the person who'd be able to do those things today because he wasn't able to do those things when he was president.
Sure. Keith, a couple more quick questions for you, and we appreciate your time. When you hear a young black man or woman claim that Democrats aren't doing anything to help me, Joe Biden's not doing anything to help me, Donald Trump has done more for black Americans than Joe Biden will ever do, what is your message to them?
That's just not true. I mean, unless that person who received a direct benefit from Donald Trump, it's just not true. There's two or three things that people tend to mention about that. One is they talk about black unemployment. Well, black unemployment was the lowest level under Donald Trump. Well, you know what? It actually started going down under Barack Obama. Oh, and Donald Trump just inherited an economy that was strong, and it's actually gotten lower under Joe Biden. We've had the lowest black unemployment rate ever under Joe Biden. Second, they talk about HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, and they say Donald Trump offered historic funding. Not true. He's the king of lies. He said this, but it's not true. Actually, there was no historic funding that came from Donald Trump. What actually came is the historic funding we have now for black colleges and universities that came from the Biden-Harris administration. Number three, they talk about, well, he released Alice Johnson from prison. Well, you know, Donald Trump only released Alice Johnson from prison because Kim Kardashian asked him to do it. And even then he wanted to get some sort of quid pro quo in exchange for it. But he also was the champion of locking more black people up in jail. He supported mass incarceration policies. He did nothing to move forward on criminal justice reform. So all those things are out the window. In contrast, the Biden administration, you know, is part of the whole Democratic policy legacy since the Civil Rights Act of 1964. No Democratic candidate for president has won the white vote since 1964, when Democratic President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act.
Right. Yeah.
Because most black people understand that. They understand that even though the Democrats haven't succeeded in everything they've tried to do, I'm not saying the Democrats are the best party ever, but even though they haven't succeeded in everything they've tried to do, they've definitely been head and shoulders above the Republican Party. The stimulus that everybody talks about that they think Trump gave them, well, Trump didn't give them that. That was Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Congress, who approved that, and part of it just had to happen to come through at the end of the Trump administration, the rest in the Biden administration. So you can go through example after example: voting rights, criminal justice reform, the unemployment rate. You can talk about healthcare, student loan debt relief. I was one of the people who's benefited from that. All those things are happening under a Democratic president, Joe Biden. He's not the best president. There's a lot more he could do. I'm not saying that, but he's definitely 10 times better than Donald Trump could even hope to be.
Agree. Okay, I want to pick your brain on one more political question here, because I interview Republicans all the time. I interview MAGA supporters all the time. When I bring up guns, two issues. They always want to bring up black on black crime and what's going on in Chicago. And of course, my response is, I don't care what the color of your skin is. Gun violence is gun violence. And then when I bring up January 6th, because I talk about January 6th a lot, they want to bring up Black Lives Matter protests and all the violence there. And what I say is, January 6th, they were there to try to overturn the outcome of an election, and some violent people did some violent things. And for the most part, Black Lives Matter protests, while a small percentage of them, I think you'll agree with me, were agitators and did some bad things, the overwhelming majority of the people there that were peaceful were there because they promoted equality. That's the argument that I try to make. But how do you deal with these Republicans when you bring up January 6th? They want to talk about Black Lives Matter. When you bring up gun violence and our kids getting gunned down in our schools, they want to talk about gang violence and the violence in Chicago. How do you respond to those people?
Well, that's why I just wrote a new book.
Let's talk about that. I want to talk about your new book as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the chapters in the book, the book is called "Why Does Everything Have to Be About Race?" and it debunks 25 of the most toxic racist arguments. One of those arguments is about black on black violence. And that black people aren't doing anything about that. We're so focused on all these other issues and police violence. And the reality is, first of all, we are aware of it. We have been dealing with it for decades throughout my entire life. But that doesn't negate the fact there is still a serious problem of police violence and racist violence that's directed at black people. When people talk about, well, most of the violence against black people is from other black people. Yeah, of course. But if you look at the FBI data, most of the violence against white people is from other white people. Most crime in America is intra-racial, not interracial. And that's because we live in a segregated society primarily. And most people who commit crimes in their own communities and neighborhoods. So yes, black people commit crimes against other people, other black people, just as white people are more likely to commit crimes against other white people. That doesn't get talked about. But when a white person shoots, kills, or robs, or rapes a white person, nobody ever says that's white on white violence.
Right.
It's just violence. And
right.
And that's what we tend to ignore. As far as the January 6th insurrection is concerned, it's just more hypocrisy from the Republican Party. Again, we all know that the whole purpose of the insurrection itself, the reason why they stormed the Capitol, was to commit a crime. The crime was storming the Capitol and trying to stop the legal process of the transfer of government. in the case of Black Lives Matter, on the other hand, the whole purpose of the movement was to get people to take action about the injustice that was happening against Black people.
Right.
Now, there were people in that group, just as there is in any group of people who did violent things, who did things that were not part of the movement's cause or objective. But that shouldn't smear or tarnish the reputation of the entire movement itself. And on contrast with January 6th, the whole purpose was to do something violent. That was not the whole purpose of January 6th. I mean, of the Black Lives Matter movement. The whole purpose is what distinguishes those two events.
Yeah, no, correct. Extremely well said. I wanted to ask you about your book, which is coming out in 2024. And of course, I'd love to have you on when that book is released. But tell me a little bit about why you decided to write this book and an idea of when the book will be released to the public to buy.
Thanks. Well, the book comes out January 23rd. It's called Why Does Everything Have to Be About Race? I decided to write it because, quite frankly, I spent 5 years on CNN working, covering the Trump administration from 2017 through 2021. And it was just exhausting. It was really exhausting as a Black man to have to deal with this. And the questions I was asked on a regular basis, the debates I had, and the Twitter nonsense that I heard, the questions were almost always the same questions over and over again. And so I felt like it was important for somebody sort of to respond to those questions over and over. The questions you hear, like, well, we gave you Barack Obama. What else do you want? Or why do you need to have a Black History Month? Why can't we have a White History Month? Or, affirmative action is just reverse racism. All these different things that people have an ahistorical understanding of American history, American government policy.
Yeah.
So they think that Black people were just out here demanding handouts and not understanding the whole history of how America got to be where we were. The fact that Black people helped to build, not only helped to, but contributed free labor for hundreds of years that helped to build this country through slavery. And then we're forced to work as second-class citizens through 100 years of segregation, and then followed by a period of mass incarceration, which we're still suffering through right now. And yet we just assume everything is supposed to be perfect, and Black people should just shut up and not complain. So there were a lot of questions I wanted to answer in this book, and this book helps me to do that.
I can't wait to read it. Love to have you on again. I have to ask you one more question. I lied. I guess it's a two-part question. What are your thoughts on what happened to Don Lemon? You did Don Lemon's show plenty of times. What are your thoughts on that situation? And my second question is, if a guy like Tucker Carlson, who I believe is a white supremacist sympathizer, asked you to do his show when your book comes out, I'm curious. Would you go on that network, and would you go on, or, well, I know Tucker's not on Fox News anymore, but would you go on a Tucker Carlson-like show, Sean Hannity, if they asked you to?
Okay, so two really difficult questions, actually, for some reason. But so for Don, I know Don, we've known each other for a long time. And I think I don't want to say too much, but I'll say that I feel like I knew the handwriting was on the wall when they moved into the daytime morning show. That you put him up with two other people. He's a late night guy who's used to saying controversial things. You put him with two people who are on the morning show, who are supposed to be family friendly and all this, and it felt like it was a setup for.
You think they did it on purpose?
I won't speculate about that because I might need to be on CNN at some point.
Well, that's what it sounds like you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth either, but that wouldn't surprise me. If they did do that, why do you think they did it?
Oh, I don't know. I can't really say that. I mean,
okay.
I feel like Don. I think Don was challenging for CNN, probably for any network, because he is kind of controversial and he does say what's on his mind. And there was a time when Black people didn't really like what Don Lemon said. I wrote an article back in the Huffington Post, I think it was years ago, criticizing Don Lemon for something he said about Black men wearing sagging pants or whatever. But we're friends still, So I don't know about that. In terms of the second part for Tucker Carlson, I'll say this. The last time I was on Fox News was when Bill O'Reilly was on. We were talking about Black Lives Matter. And he cut my microphone in the middle of my appearance. And I was so pissed off, I told him I would never come back. I've never been back on Fox News. And the last time I had a book that came out a few years ago, it wasn't a possibility for me to go on Fox News because I was working for CNN. I had a contract where I couldn't go there. But my publicist did ask me recently if I would go on Fox News if they asked me. So I said, well, I'm not opposed to it, depending on who the host is.
Well, here's why I think you should, and you're going to do what you want to do, but you're obviously an extremely intelligent guy, well-spoken, and I want people like you on Fox News. I want more Democrats going on Fox News. And listen, if somebody cuts your mic off, that's ridiculous. I'm not shocked that Bill O'Reilly would do that to somebody like you. Not shocking to me at all. But at the same time, I think you should, just because, give it to a guy like a Sean Hannity or a Laura Ingraham, whether it be the racism or the bigotry and what's going on over there at Fox News. I think, we need more people like you to go on that side. That's just my personal opinion, and give it to those guys. But Keith, I've always appreciated you, and I've always appreciated your political commentary. I think you're one of the best out there, and I'd love to have you on once again when your book is out, and I can't wait to read it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure.
Appreciate that. That's Keith Boykin, everybody. Have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I really do. Really smart guy. Tells it like it is, but does it in an eloquent way and in an intelligent way. Very interesting what he said about Don Lemon there. I never really thought of it that. Makes sense, doesn't it? Again, I don't mean to sound like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but why would CNN put Don Lemon, who was doing a late night show, and he's right, I don't always agree with Don Lemon either, but why would they have him and put him from late night TV, because that's really what he was doing, to an early morning show with two women? That is peculiar, and I understand where Keith is going with that. And listen, Keith and Don Lemon are friends, so that's why I wanted to ask him that. And I know there's certain things that he probably can't say, and I want him to continue to be on CNN because I think he does a great job. But that is a little peculiar, and that is interesting. Now, at the same time, in my personal opinion, one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton lost, there's a lot of reasons why she lost in 2016. Overqualified lady, no question. Very intelligent, experienced, all that stuff. Hillary should have done interviews on Fox News. Hillary should have gone on right-wing entities and got her word out more. She didn't run a great campaign. I'm just going to be honest with you. And, very qualified, very intelligent, but I don't think she ran a great campaign. I think most Democrats would probably agree with that. And I think this country would be in a much better place. I think I'm speaking the obvious here. If Donald Trump didn't win in 2016, I wish Hillary did win. I wish we could, go back in time, but we can't do that now. We are where we're at. And, Keith makes a lot of good points, whether it be about the Clintons, whether it be about the Republican Party today. And I'm going to be honest with you, when we were talking at the beginning of this interview about the Harvard president, this is one thing I really appreciate. I appreciate a lot about Keith, but I thought maybe we would disagree on a lot of stuff there because he's basically said that he doesn't believe that the president at Harvard should be fired. So I thought we would get into an exchange, and disagree, but I really couldn't disagree with a lot of what he said. He made a lot of valid points. He agreed that what the response was when it comes to that president and the three presidents that were up there was not a good response. They should have been better prepared. And listen, Stefanik is probably going to be Donald Trump's vice president. Can we all agree on that? I'll open up the phone lines. We got a couple minutes here. Your thoughts on the Keith Boykin interview that I just did. Really appreciated him coming on. That was 40 minutes of really, really good stuff. The number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation is 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the show, 702-221-7283. Now, I started off the show today and I did a segment about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the disastrous interview he did on CNN and the conspiracy theories about the vaccines and the lies. And he took a page from the Donald Trump / Vivek Ramaswamy playbook in this aspect. Vivek Ramaswamy is questioned and called out on the things that he actually says. It could be in a podcast, on TV, on Twitter, and he denies the actual words that were spoken. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does the exact same stuff, and I proved it for you in this CNN interview. On one side, on a podcast, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying that he believes there are no good vaccines out there. That's basically what he said word for word. And when he's challenged on that by a CNN host, he says, "Oh no, I never said that." Then they cut to the clip. And then all of a sudden it goes from, "I didn't ever said that," to, "Oh, maybe I could have chose my words better." No, you just lied. And I don't want to hear the excuse of, "Oh, I do hundreds of interviews. I don't remember every word I said." When you make a statement like that the vaccines for the most part are all bad, that's one of your beliefs. I personally, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. might believe that. He might not. I don't know. But he certainly said it. That's what he said. So I can only go by what somebody says, right? So that is why people like Charlie Kirk, another white supremacist sympathizer, Steve Bannon, and some of those that are on the extreme right are supporters of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Why? Because he's a conspiracy theorist. That's what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is. He's a conspiracy theorist. All right. Number to call again if you want to be a part of the show. I'm going to take some calls now for the next few minutes here. Now's the time to call in if you'd like. 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283. If you'd like to be a part of the show, we've gone over a lot today. We've talked about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We've talked about those on a college campus that might call for the genocide of those that are Jews, and the response of these three presidents up there, and the outcry. Now, listen, Stefanik has never called out Donald Trump for anything. Donald Trump, with his bigotry and his hatred and his racist comments, these people crossing our border, they're rapists, they're bad people, and I suppose some of them are good people when talking about Mexicans that were crossing the border illegally. I can go on and on with the statements, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. Donald Trump, in his casinos, or at the time casino in Atlantic City, he had some high rollers that didn't want black people to be dealing. I talked about this yesterday. He had to give it the okay and remove all black people in the pit where you had the high roller that was gambling. Donald Trump did that. Donald Trump is the person that said he did not want black people counting his money in his casinos. He wanted Jewish people counting his money. Did Stefanik ever talk about that? Did she ever criticize Donald Trump for that? Or the grab him by the P word video? Or heck, the comments he just made the other day that were, and I hate to compare Hitler, but the Hitler-esque type comments that Donald Trump has been spewing out of his mouth. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Edward, who's next up. Edward, what's going on?
Hey, remember when Trump said black kids are just as smart as white kids?
Do I remember when Donald Trump said black kids are just as smart as white kids? I mean, he might have said that. He might have said that.
No, that was your dumbass.
So is that all you have to say, or would you like to actually? Okay, that's all he had to say. Okay. Very, very intelligent MAGA supporter calling into the show. Very, very bright guy. Edward is a perfect example of a Donald Trump supporter. Let me explain to you what I mean by that, and then we'll take another call at 702-221-7283. Here's a perfect example of a MAGA supporter. We've talked about racial issues on this show. We've talked about conspiracy theories. We've talked about health care. We've talked about gun control, a lot of abortion, a lot of important issues that I think most Americans have an opinion on, right? And then MAGA supporter, I'm assuming he's a MAGA supporter, a guy named Edward calls up and decides to make a joke and tries to insult me. This is what MAGA Republicans do. They don't want to actually have a real conversation. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Jeff. Jeff, what's going on? Okay, Jeff, I can't hear a word you're saying, so I think you need to call back when you clear your throat. I think that was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that called into the show. I think you need to clear your throat, sir, and then maybe call back. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Julie. Julie's next on Pushing the Limits. Hello, Julie.
Hi, Brian. Sorry, but I disagree with you. Do you remember when Biden said that he didn't want his kid to be raised in a racial jungle?
Yes, I do
Is
remember
that
that
a
statement.
lie?
I do remember that
And do you
statement.
remember when he joined? But let me finish. Do you remember when he joined the segregationist bloc of the Democratic Caucus and actively worked to oppose school busing? Do you remember that?
I do. Yes. Your point.
Do you remember when he said, "You are not black if you don't vote for me"?
Okay. Do you remember? Okay. Now I'm gonna. You just asked me 3 questions, so now I'm gonna answer. Do you remember when Joe Biden apologized for that statement? Are you trying to compare Donald Trump and his history with my? Hold on. No, let me finish now. Are you trying to compare Joe Biden as somehow painting him the picture of being a racist, comparable to Donald Trump, who has to deal with so many lawsuits involving minorities his entire life? Are you trying to compare Joe Biden to Donald Trump when it comes to their treatment of black people? Donald Trump, who had the least diverse administration in the history of this country, compared to Joe Biden? Now I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you a question, and I want you to answer it. Are you comparing Joe Biden to Donald Trump when it comes to their treatment of minorities? Yes or no?
Let me tell you.
No, you don't ask a question when I ask a question. You answer my question. Are you trying to compare with a straight face that Joe Biden is showing the level of racism and bigotry that Donald Trump is? Is that what you're trying to do? Because you're a moron if you're doing that.
No, let me respond to you.
I'm waiting.
Biden was a senator, but Donald Trump was a businessman. So it's even worse because he's a political figure.
Was Donald Trump a really good businessman? Was he a really good businessman? Yeah, he did a really good job, yeah. How was that Trump University or all the businesses that have filed for bankruptcy?
I don't care about Trump.
Then don't say he's a businessman. Then don't say he's a businessman and make it like it's some sort of positive, because it ain't. Now, you didn't answer my question, so now I'm going to ask it again. Are you comparing Joe Biden to Donald Trump's bigotry, racism, and sexism? The 25 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape. The liable rapist that is Donald Trump. His own ex-wife accused him of rape in court documents. Are you comparing the human being, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden as alike? Would you possibly do that as a female?
That you are ignoring. I don't care about Trump's sexual affair because
But you care about a statement. But you care about Potter down again. You care about a statement that Joe Biden made about a racial jungle, and that seems to bother you. And you care about a statement that Joe Biden said about you ain't black if you're not voting for me. By the way, a statement that he apologized for. You're the one who brought that up in a radio show. And now you're telling me Donald Trump, a proven liable rapist in a courtroom. And as a woman, you're telling me you don't care about that. You don't care about somebody that's a proven liable rapist that I would imagine you would still vote for, but you have a problem with Joe Biden saying you ain't black if you're not voting for me. Julie, does that make any sense at all?
Tell me, where is the footage, the DNA, and the witnesses in the store?
Okay, Potter down again. Potter, you're going to make every defense for Donald Trump. By the way, here's a news flash, Julie. There was no DNA evidence for Bill Cosby either. You don't have to have DNA evidence to prove in a courtroom that somebody is a sexual assaulter. So you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. But let's just go by your logic. Let's just go by your MAGA logic for a moment, if I may, Julie, because I want to have this conversation with you. I want to try to understand people like you. You're telling me that if somebody is proven liable of rape in a courtroom in this country, you don't believe it unless there's DNA. Is that what you're saying?
So that is, if you are telling me that, I can accuse you of rape. Even if I don't have a witness or a DNA.
Potter down again. You see, here's what would happen, Julie, if you accused me of sexual assault, which, by the way, never been accused of in my life because guess what? I'm not a sexual assaulter. I don't have 25 women that have accused me of sexual assault or rape. I've never been married to a woman who accused me of rape in a courtroom. Never. But let's just hypothetically go with your idiocy for a moment, if I may, Julie, okay? Julie, you're going to have to stop talking. You're going to have to listen, okay? Let's just say I'm going to answer your question, and I want you to pay attention and listen. Here's what would happen, Julie. because it never happened. I would file a counter lawsuit against you for defamation. We would prove it in a courtroom that you lied, that we never met before. We never had any physical contact before. We never met. I never had your phone number. And then what would happen in a courtroom, oh, by the way, no DNA as well, because I know that's very important to you. So then I would sue you for defamation, and I would take all your money, just like those two women are taking, eventually going to take all of Rudy Giuliani's money. So to answer your question, that's what would happen. That didn't happen in Donald Trump's case. You know why? Because there was something called evidence that it happened. And a jury of his peers proved to him that yes, he's a liable rapist in a courtroom. That's why E. Jean Carroll won. How do you not understand the difference? And why is it anything that I bring up that is Donald Trump, you defend? Anything that I bring up, you defend. But it's some statement that Joe Biden made about you ain't black enough, you're not going to vote for me. If it's a statement that Joe Biden made, you'll be up in arms, but you defend everything the orange turd said. Why is that?
Let me ask you, do you believe in Tara Reid and Lucy Flores, even if we don't have evidence?
Do I believe
that
what?
Biden sexually abused them.
Was it proven in a courtroom?
No, because
it wasn't.
They were,
okay, pot her down again. No. You see, what you're bringing up never happened. The woman who brought that up changed her story. Donald Trump was never indicted. There were no court documents, and he was never proven liable for any sexual assault. How do you not understand the difference? How do you not understand the difference to a woman who lies, is a proven liar, and it was never proven in a courtroom that any of that stuff happened, to Donald Trump?
Because this is a political persecution, Brian.
It's a political. Okay, so Potter. Well, this is really fun. We've now potted you down like 30 times. My producer's arm is getting very, very tired. So anything that. Okay, so let me ask you another question then. Since you think anything and everything against Donald Trump is a political prosecution, would you say what's going on with Hunter Biden is also a political prosecution? Answer that, please.
Why 51 CIA?
Yes or no? Yes, Julie, this isn't going to work unless you answer my question.
No,
because
this is proven.
It's proven. Okay, pot her down again. So if it's a Democrat or Hunter Biden, it's not political prosecution at all. If it's anything, it could be a sexual assault. It could be classified documents. It could be a phone call in the Georgia, the electorate scheme. It's all political prosecution. But if it's a Democrat, then it's okay. I want to make a very important example. And Julie, I do appreciate you calling in, and you can call in anytime you want and we could have a discussion. However, when Donald Trump said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'll still vote for me, he was talking about Julie. He was talking about you, Julie. That's who he was talking about. Donald Trump could literally commit a sexual assault on camera, and you would still say he was innocent. You would still say it's political prosecution. You would still blame George Soros for everything. Well, let me give you a news flash, Julie, whether you like it or not. Donald Trump is facing 91 felony counts. He's going to be a convicted felon. Joe Biden has never faced one felony count in his life, and I can guarantee you he never will. Donald Trump is going to be a convicted felon. I'm sorry, what did you say, Julie, now? Something about the FBI? What was it?
Because the FBI and the CIA and the Department of Justice is corrupt, Brian.
The CIA, the FBI, gotcha. Okay, so the CIA, the FBI, they're all Democrats, or are there like Republicans in the FBI as well? Are they all George Soros Democrats, Julie? Julie?
Brian.
Julie, don't keep saying my name. I'm talking to you. Hey, Julie. CIA agents
signed a letter.
Julie, you're not answering my question, Julie. Julie, are they only?
No.
Julie, are there any Are they all Democrats and George Soros funded people in the FBI or the CIA, or is there a possibility that there might be some Republicans in there too?
I don't want to talk about Soros.
Well, you're saying that the FBI
evil people.
He is
evil. Funding.
Got you. Okay. All right.
He's funding.
Right.
He's
but
paying
somebody who
in America,
right, but somebody who okay, but somebody who sexually assaults somebody who sexually assaults a woman in a dressing room, you vote for, but George Soros is the evil one. Somebody who's a racist, misogynistic pig his entire life, that's somebody that Julie votes for. Yeah, I got you, Julie. I got you. Any Republican that is indicted for a crime, it's politicized. But if a Democrat if a Democrat is indicted, then it's okay. Julie, I appreciate the call. It's exhausting. I appreciate the call. Thank you. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Al. Al, what's going on?
Hey, Brian. It's the first time I've caught you on the show. I just want to say something. There's a cemetery in Washington, D.C. called Arlington Cemetery. And I would like to ask all those great American soldiers that gave their lives for this country how they feel about Donald Trump making the comment he'll be a dictator. I would love to hear, I know it'll never happen, but I would love to hear the comment. Donald Trump is trash. He's nothing but trash. Mm-hmm. He's a little rich guy who got a break from his daddy. And I don't understand. He's a manipulator. He's proven that. Let's look at his track record. He had sex with a porn star when he had a 4-month-old baby home. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah, unprotected too, by the way. Yes.
Unprotected.
Yeah.
Where are all these great Christian Republicans? Oh, God, he's the greatest. Where are they right now?
Well, they're hypocrites.
And you know what? I'd put money on this. How many abortions do you think Donald Trump has paid for in his lifetime?
I am a gambler, so I will set the line for you, Las Vegas style, and I hate to do that when it comes to abortions, but I will in this aspect. I would put the Vegas line at around 13.5.
I'd say about 20.
Okay, so you would take the over. You'd probably win that bet.
Yeah, I'd take the over.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
He comes into office, and he's got this great deal about telling the people of the United States Mexico is going to pay for this wall.
Yeah, which they didn't.
What does the Mexican government do? Yeah. They laugh at the United States.
Well, he campaigned off of that. He campaigned when he ran against Hillary Clinton. He ran on two things: we're going to build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it, and we're going to lock up Hillary Clinton. It turns out the person that might be locked up is him.
Right. Let's go to when he was president. He had this great, fantastic healthcare system. He's going to ban Obamacare. Look, let me say something to all the Republican people out there. At least Obama tried to do something. Mm-hmm. He did try to do something. Whether you liked Obamacare or not, he tried.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a lot more than I could say about the great plan that Donald Trump had.
Oh, amen.
What is Donald Trump? What was his plan?
I think you want to know his plan? No, I here's where I disagree with you. I think his plan was to enrich himself, to build his brand, and to make it all about him. And I think he still wants to do that. He wants to pardon his friends, maybe himself, and he wants to continue to keep himself out of jail and enrich himself. That he only cares about himself. He doesn't care about anybody in this country but himself. I don't even think he cares about his own family. He only cares about himself and only himself. So I get what you're saying, and you're right. But I do think he had a plan in 2016, and that was to build his brand. He didn't think that he was ever going to become the president of the United States.
Oh, no.
Then all of a sudden it happened. He was shocked, and he took advantage of anything he can do, legal and illegal, to enrich himself, and he's still doing the same thing today.
You know, I don't know if you watch professional wrestling.
I'm
going to use this.
I used to when I was a kid.
You know, there was a time when Donald Trump made an appearance on the WWE or WWF.
I remember that. Yep.
Okay. And if you really look at what a professional wrestler, and I love the wrestling business. I've been a fan my whole life, and they are truly athletes, whatever. But they have a persona about these guys, but they know when to turn it off.
Donald Trump doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Donald Trump does not, and he is still playing the character of a professional wrestler that he has no clue how to turn it off.
But the difference between him and professional wrestlers, most professional wrestlers that I've heard of or that I know are not racist bigot turds like he is.
And they're not racist and bigot.
Yeah. Hey, Al, it's great to hear from you, my man. Good to hear from you. I got to take a break, brother, but please, you call back anytime. Great call, my friend. I appreciate you.
I'll be watching for you, Brian.
Thanks,
you got a
Al.
great show.
Thank you, dude.
You know, and nothing against Republicans. They need to get their act together, just as our Democrats need to get their act together.
Yep.
We pay tax dollars for these people to do a job, and they're not doing it on both sides of the aisle.
Amen, brother. Amen, brother.
All right, bro.
Great
Good
call.
talking to you, man.
Thank you, sir.
All
You
right.
call back anytime. That was a breath of fresh air. Al's a smart guy. Appreciate the phone calls, everybody, even Julie out there. Julie, I'm sorry if you thought I was a little too hard on you, but come on, man. You got to come at me better than that. Everything I say about Trump, you defend. And then when it comes to Joe Biden, oh, he said this about a racial jungle. He said, you're not black enough if you vote for me. I mean, it's just, come on, man. How could I have a conversation with somebody like that? Holy smokes. My thanks to Keith Boykin, by the way, for joining us, former Bill Clinton advisor in the White House. Great guy. Look for his book coming out in late January. And I also want to thank everybody on the Occupy Democrats Network for joining me. It's a pleasure being on that platform and being able to share my show with all of you. I'm very thankful for that. My socials on YouTube is at PTL Radio Show. On Twitter, at PTL Radio Show. Facebook fan page as well I have, and a lot of good stuff on there, and appreciate all of you for listening. Thank you so much. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn the page now. We're going to talk some sports next segment. Ron Futrell from Channel 8 is going to be joining us. We got some Raiders talk to get to, a little NFL talk, a little UNLV football bowl season talk. UNLV in a bowl game on Tuesday. We've got the Las Vegas Bowl in Las Vegas this weekend. We got Arizona and Florida Atlantic, two really good basketball teams that are playing in Las Vegas this weekend as well. So there's a lot to get to with Ron. And we'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits, part of the Occupy Democrats Network right here on KSHP.